welcome back to the Thinking Fourth Dimensionally podcast. My name is Josh.
My name's Devin, and today we are talking about Independence Day.
Yes. So for anyone who, all of our fans out there, if you probably noticed that last week we missed our post. We are going to finish the Back to the Future trilogy, but with the upcoming holiday, the 4th of July, which is one of our
yesterday when this is posted.
Yeah. With it being one of our favorite holidays, and we just felt it'd be cool to talk about also one of our favorite movies, certainly one of my favorite movies, Independence Day, from 1996. 1996, directed by Roland Emmerich, produced by Dean Devlin, a team you may know from such popular movies as Independence Day.
Obviously.
And they also did Godzilla in 98, which is another movie that's not well loved. And then also
Is that the one with Matthew Broderick?
Yes. And then I also found out, I realized we watched Stargate, the movie.
No.
It had a young what's his name? From The Office and
James Spader.
James Spader, yes, a young James Spader. So Stargate, it's, again, same team. And I remember when we watched that movie, I'd never seen it before.
The same team?
It's the same people who made Independence Day.
Whoa.
And I remember when we watched it, the sound of the spacecraft or the aircraft, whatever it is in that movie, is the exact same sound they use for the alien spacecraft and the fighters in Independence Day. And I was like, that sounds
really
like the same sound. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh, well, no wonder. It's the same people.
I didn't know that.
So,
interesting.
And the movie is starring some pretty good star power here. We got Will Smith. I mean, this was kind of one of his breakout roles, as well as Jeff Goldblum, who's always fun to have around.
Always.
And we'll get deep into the cast probably a little bit later. But, yeah. A lot of people don't like this movie. They think it's really stupid. But
I mean, it's rated 67% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's not that bad. I've seen worse rated movies on, especially Rotten Tomatoes. But it's a 75% audience score, so that's not bad.
Well, that's why I can certainly acknowledge some of its flaws, especially when it comes to how ludicrous some of the things are. The characters are very one note. There's not a lot of character development throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Everyone is exactly the same as when they started, other than a couple of
the relationship.
Some relationship growth, but as far as character arcs, it's basically non-existent. So this movie gets a lot of hate for stuff like that. But for me personally, and similar to Back to the Future, Back to the Future is objectively a great movie. This one, however, I think I have a little bit of a personal bias because it's very nostalgic for me. And the reason for that is because I watched it growing up as a kid. So 96, I was about 7 years old. So I was at that impressionable age where a big action movie like this was a big deal for me. And I was simple-minded at the time. Flashing lights and explosions, I was all about it. But I also had, again, similar to Back to the Future, where I had a big interest in time travel. I also, as a kid, had a very big interest, arguably bigger interest, in aliens and UFOs.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I didn't like reading as a kid, but if I had to pick a book in the library at school, it was
I thought you were going to say the flying
It was going to be UFO. Well, we'll get to that later.
Really? I didn't know that you were, big... I was scared of aliens as a kid. I was totally convinced that they were coming.
Because of the movies?
No, just because of my imagination, I suppose. Yeah. Aliens, they're scary. I didn't want to be abducted by aliens.
Well, yeah, it depends on a lot of TV shows and movies. They always make aliens out to be malicious and intent, but Well, eventually we'll watch more Star Trek, and you'll get to see that not all aliens are bad.
Okay. If you say so. I don't know. I just was wondering if it was your favorite Will Smith movie, but I don't have a list of Will Smith movies right here with me. So.
Yeah, it might be. I mean, like I said, a lot of my bias with this movie is because it was a childhood favorite. I watched it over and over again when I was a kid. Pretty much every time I went to my grandmother's house, she had it on VHS. And I swear I wore that I think we still have it, don't we?
We still have it. I've watched it.
So I haven't completely worn it out, but...
I think it did start... One night when I was watching it, it did start kind of like, you know, what old videotapes do, where it starts kind of like cutting out and everything, and I stopped it because I'm like, if I ruin this movie, Josh is going to kill me.
Well, fortunately, we have 2 Blu-ray copies. So.
That's true, but still. I don't remember if this was on the list of things that you showed me when we first got together.
I'd be surprised if you had never seen it because they played it on TV a lot.
Yeah, I think I've seen before you, let's see, because in my Facebook memories today, it actually has July 3rd, 2014, which was pretty soon after, you know, we started dating, that we were watching it, but nowhere before that. So I think I probably had seen it, but I didn't really care much about it before you.
Yeah, then you met me and I told you how great the movie is and I love it so much. Yeah. And you're like, what? Okay.
Yeah, I was like, all right, sure. We can
might want to rethink this union here. So, the movie's on in the background, and right now is one of my favorite parts where Will Smith is dragging the alien he knocked out through the desert, and he gets all pissed off because he should be at a barbecue right now, and the alien's heavy, and he smells, and...
Well, have you ever had a moment like that?
Oh.
Where, like, you are so stressed out, and it's just, everything's wrong, you're like, I could be doing something so much more fun right now, and then you just, like, kick the object that you're dragging
I've think of some of the jobs I've had in the past where I'm doing something that I'd much rather be somewhere else. So, yes, of course I can relate to this military hero. Not that I'm a hero of any kind, but...
full of yourself.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about again, Star Wars, which was a huge influence on science fiction, and right from the beginning of this movie, you see the influence with the alien mothership coming in overhead, which is the exact same intro as the first Star Wars movie, where you have the Star Destroyer coming in overhead, and it accomplishes the same thing, right? It emphasizes the size of the spacecraft and the power of the beings in control of it. So in Star Wars, it's, you know, the looming power and authority of the Empire chasing the little rebellion ship, whereas here you have the giant alien spaceship that casts a shadow over the moon. So it's, you know, letting you know that, hey, this is like an entire race of aliens. It's not just like a little group of them visiting Earth. It's, no, they're here for a reason, which is to destroy the beings on it and take over its resources. So, and that being said, we'll segue into one of my favorite things about the movie, which you mentioned earlier, is the flying stuff. Because I have a huge passion in aviation, particularly military aviation, and I remember as a kid I noticed, so a lot of the movies I liked were about like aerial battles, dogfights, that kind of thing. So you had the original Star Wars, where you have the, you know, X-Wings versus TIE fighters. You have this movie where it's, you know, the F-18s versus the alien fighters. Top Gun, which is fighters against fighters, but it's all the same thing, you know, it's aerial dogfighting. Now what's funny about this movie is I watched a commentary a while back, and they actually said that their intent for the dogfights, the aerial battles in this movie, was to combine Top Gun with Star Wars. That was what they were going for, and I was like, well, no wonder I liked it.
Yeah. Two perfect things for you.
Yeah. Which, that being said, I guess we can mention the special effects, which, look, for its age, that was the year Jurassic Park came out, right? Which was kind of...
Was it?
I think that was 96 too, and Jurassic Park kind of set the stage for using computer graphics, and I always thought that this movie was a good example of that too, where it blends the practical and the digital together really, really well. As I've gone back and listened to some of the commentaries...
3 years off. Jurassic Park came out in 1993.
Oh, okay. Well, I just showed a hole in my knowledge there. That's good.
You're a little off. It's
so,
okay.
Well, even more so than I guess. I would expect that because that was such a big deal in Jurassic Park, that was when like everybody wanted to get their hands on computer technology and start integrating CGI in their movies. So I always thought that this movie was that blend. However, when I've gone back and listened to a lot of some of the commentaries, especially the special effects one, is how much practical that is in this thing.
Mm-hmm.
With the models, the way they use real explosions in the destruction scene.
I was going to ask you about that, about when the cities are destroyed. Do you know how they did that?
Yeah, it was models with real explosions.
So they just blew up a little mini city area?
Well, it was an integration of, stuff. It wasn't, they didn't have like a model city that they just like blew up. But the buildings, there's a lot of like really famous shots of buildings exploding, and those were practical. They mentioned, I think it was the Empire State Building, was a 15-foot tall model.
Whoa!
And they blew it up.
My goodness.
And again, I feel like that's why it looks so good, though, is because it was real. They captured a real thing on camera, and they just added all the special stuff around it to emphasize what was going on. One interesting effect that they did was when the destroyer alien spacecraft is coming into the atmosphere, and you have like this big cloud.
Mm-hmm.
So that was done like in a water tank. That they'd put copper tubing into the water, and then put, I think it was like white paint, and there's little holes in the copper tubing, and the paint would come up out of the holes. It would make this cloudy image, similar to like when you put milk in coffee, that same kind of effect. And then they had like this really fancy lighting rig to give it that bright, fiery look that it has. Mm-hmm. So again, even that, which you would nowadays, that would be all done in a computer, even that was practical. So it's pretty impressive what they were able to accomplish.
I since you brought up it coming into the atmosphere, I kind of was wondering, would something that large coming into the atmosphere actually shake the ground? I mean, that's scientific, so I don't know if you'll know. But they show like in like the camper of Russ's kids. It like shakes things.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It doesn't make sense that it would like vibrate the air and the atmosphere.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. And like Will Smith, when he's laying in bed, there's an earthquake.
Yeah, that might be movie logic, just to add an effect to, just to kind of show more the gravity of this is something huge that's happening. I mean, I know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've never had a 15-mile size thing come through the atmosphere.
And I hope we never do.
If we ever meet a dinosaur, maybe they can tell us what it's like. But
poor dinosaurs. But yeah, I was just curious, because when I saw that, like with Will Smith and the kids, I was like, would that actually happen? And then another thing I was wondering if that would actually happen when Air Force One is taking off and the fire from...
That you would feel, because there's an explosion going on around you.
But the lights dim. Would that happen in an airplane? Would the lights actually dim?
In Air Force One, probably. I mean, the government doesn't get the best stuff, usually.
Yeah, they just spend $50,000 on a hammer.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I would.
Again,
if the lights are dimming, if the lights are dimming because of a little shaking, then I would probably fire my mechanic.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like that shouldn't be happening.
Those connections are probably a little loose. Again, it's movie logic. They do a lot of this stuff for dramatic effect, so that's
yeah, I know.
So.
I was just curious. That's all.
I mean, it squeezes in a lot. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens throughout this movie. It's telling almost like a 3-part story. It's literally split into 3 parts, which I think is kind of cool. It goes from July 2nd is Act 1, July 3rd is Act 2, then July 4th is Act 3. So it's a very, very structured in its story. But right at the beginning, it just starts right in with hey, there's this weird thing in space right now. What the hell is it? We need to figure it out. Is it a threat? And it's just like the story just picks right up, which a lot of people would probably say that's a flaw because it doesn't take the time to lay the foundation, introduce you to the characters.
I mean, it kind of does. You learn about Jeff Goldblum with his dad, and as the movie moves on, you learn each character as they're going through these things.
Sure, but you don't spend a lot of time with them, because there is a lot of characters in this movie. Again, similar to a lot of modern blockbusters, where you don't get to know too much about the characters because you're just jumping around from, okay, it's the president, to, okay, this is David, and then this is Will Smith's character, and then this is that character.
Oh, I feel like in a movie,
but that's why they're all one note.
You don't really have to know them.
Yeah.
Like, it's a fun, crazy, silly movie. Like, you don't have to be emotionally invested in
right.
The
Well,
president.
that's why I'm saying it's like it's not serious. It's not supposed to be taken so serious. Like, oh, this is what would happen in real life if aliens attacked us. You know, it's serious enough to have some severity to the plot, but it doesn't take itself so seriously that you can't. It still makes jokes. It still has fun.
Yeah, but I still feel like we learn enough. Like, we learn that Will Smith's character he's in love with a woman. He's gonna ask her to marry him. He wants to be in NASA. He wants to be an astronaut.
Yeah,
like we learn enough. We learn about the president and kind of how he's perceived by the media, and he loves his wife. He's got a cute little daughter. David, he's divorced, but I feel like I said that weird. He's divorced, but he hasn't given up. He still loves his ex-wife. He still wants to be with her. He wants to save the planet. We learn quite a bit about these characters.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Maybe, like I said, just because I've watched it so many times, a lot of that stuff I just breeze over.
And we see it as the movie moves on, and I like that. I like that they're not sacrificing the action and everything just for us to take a minute and learn about.
But there again, like, some people look at that as being like really cheesy, like with David's whole thing about saving the world, and then it's like he's silly, about it that he's like anal about recycling and stuff, and so people look at that as like it's just very lazy script writing because there's no nuance to it. It's very one note, like I said in the beginning. But again, I think it's fine for this type of movie. It's what it's trying. It's not trying to be something more intelligent than what it is. Now, for the sequel, we'll just go ahead and get that out of the way. The sequel sucks. Don't waste your money on that movie because it's a
and if you already have, I'm sorry.
As bad as people think this movie is, that one is a train wreck.
I was actually sitting there thinking about the sequel because I didn't remember if we had seen it, and then it all like started coming back to me, and I was like, oh no.
Yeah, and I tried giving it a second chance because it's like, well, it's modern special effects and it's a franchise that, I mean, not much of a franchise, it's one movie, but I really enjoyed it, and I was like, maybe I should give it a second chance. Maybe it was just the first impression, and it's like it was painful to get through the second time. I didn't enjoy it the first time, but the second time I was like, why am I doing this to myself?
Yeah. I don't think I watched it a second time with you.
No, I did it on my own.
Yeah, you put yourself through that.
Yep.
Did you know this movie was they wanted it to be called Doomsday? Well, the writers wanted it to be called Independence Day, but they were afraid of some copyright issues with something else. I can't remember what it was. But they were pushing for it to be called Independence Day, and some of the studio heads were saying no. But the president's speech, where he says, today is our Independence Day, really sealed the deal and made it so that they were like, okay, yeah, you can call it that.
Yeah, so, well, I don't blame them because, so again, to push back on anybody who maybe doesn't like this movie, you have to admit that friggin' speech is phenomenal.
It's epic!
I love
it.
It's so good. It's so true to any... I don't know, if you have any patriotic blood in your system, you should hear that and just be like, F yeah, like we're gonna come together, we're gonna fight off these tyrannical beings that want to destroy us. And it's like this movie kind of portrays the president that you would want to have in real life. Like, this is the kind of guy you would want to lead your country, right? He's smart. He's a military leader, and he makes decisions based off of what's good for the people. Not, you know. I feel like if we want to talk about what would happen in real life, the president would be thinking about how this alien invasion would hurt his campaign.
Yeah, we're good.
So as I was saying, just that this president acts like the way you would want a president to act in real life, right? He's a really good leader, makes decisions for the people, and that sort of thing. So, I mean, this movie you should be able to admit that it has at least that going for it. Who was played by Bill Pullman, by the way.
Yes.
Who's been in, actually, fun fact, most people probably know this already, but he was in Spaceballs, one of the main characters in Spaceballs, and which is obviously an extremely comedic role. Mm-hmm. He was a goofball in that movie, and then in this one he is actually playing a serious role. There's not a lot of, I don't think there's hardly any comedy to his role in this movie. So I can't imagine like people. I didn't see Spaceballs till later when I got older, but I can't imagine people who are like a big fan of that movie knew Bill Pullman from that movie, then watched this, and it's like, wait, who the heck is this guy? Like a completely different actor, right? But I like we said earlier, I just think he completely nails it, and every time, no matter how many times I watch this movie, every time I hear that speech, I'm just like, hell yeah.
Let's go fight some aliens.
So do you think Randy Quaid was actually acting in this movie?
God, no. Randy Quaid, he is quite the character in everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've seen him in a few things, and I'm pretty convinced that he's just Randy Quaid, and they just record Randy Quaid doing his thing.
It seems that way sometimes.
Yeah.
He just like starts doing something silly, and they're like, get the camera, quick.
Like, I mean, is he still a firefighter?
I don't know. It's like he was big news for like a month, and then now
was he big news everywhere, or was it just in Vermont?
That's true. I think it was probably big. He was a celebrity who was like losing his mind, so I think that part was probably big news. Yeah. But I think in Vermont it was probably bigger news.
Because we're like, oh, there's actually someone here.
Yeah, something going on in our middle of nowhere. Oh, I will say, for Randy's character, Russell Case, he is one of the ones that does kind of have a character arc because of the fact that at the beginning of the movie, you know, he's just this crazy drunk that nobody takes seriously because all he does is, well, he crop dusts the wrong fields and he talks about his alien kidnapping and everyone thinks he's nuts. And then by the end of the movie, you know, he sobers up and, you know, he is willing to sacrifice himself to save, you know, his friends and family and the entire world. So there's a little bit of a redemption arc when it comes to his character. That being said, do you think his kids are actually his kids, or are they adopted?
I think they're his kids.
Even though they're like a completely different race?
Their mother could be. You don't know. We don't meet her.
Yeah, it's true.
We have no idea. I think they are his kids. They seem pretty attached to him. Which, I mean, I guess if they were adopted, they probably would be too. But, no, I think they're his kids.
So how about those cigars?
How about them?
This movie made me want to smoke cigars.
Like as a child, or
just... Yes, as a child, I was just so desperate for cigars, I sought them out.
You know, I'm just curious.
Well, again, I told you about how, like, I was young when I watched it, I was impressionable, and the whole cigar smoking thing, they just portray it as being, like, so cool and suave.
Right.
You know, Will fucking Smith is the one. Yeah. And also, I like the way that they portray the smoking the cigar as being like a celebratory thing. It's not, oh, I'm addicted to this and I have to have it. It's like, no, it's like we just finished this battle. The fat lady has swung, quote unquote, sung. Yeah, it's probably not swinging too much.
Poor lady.
You know, it's a something you do to celebrate an accomplishment, and I was like, that's cool. And then obviously, you know, like again, you have Will Smith, who's just a badass in this movie, which he bulked up for this movie, man. Because before we saw this, it was like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, right? He was just,
really,
you know, a skinny kid in Philadelphia, born and raised. You know how that always triggers the song in your head whenever you hear the lyrics?
Now.
Exactly. So, but in this movie, man, he's jacked. He's got the bicep veins, and yeah, he took, I think he took the whole military role seriously.
The final episode was May 20th, 1996, and this came out.
Also, he was still doing Fresh Prince.
Well,
oh no, this came out in '96. You're right.
Yeah.
I was thinking of Jurassic Park in '93.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, like I said, it was like Fresh Prince was kind of what established him as an actor and in the mainstream, and then this was like his breakout movie, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I didn't do enough research to know for
dig
sure,
into
but
Will Smith's.
in my memory, from what I remember, this was like the first big movie that he was like, oh man, this guy's like for real.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I still haven't, I've never, even though I've always wanted a cigar, I've never had one, so yet.
You will eventually, baby.
Yeah, once I have something to celebrate.
Yep.
I guess our wedding wasn't enough.
Wow. Thanks. Did you know that Matthew Perry was gonna be in this?
Was he just gonna stand around and make jokes like?
No, he was supposed to play his friend, Will Smith's friend, Jimmy.
Oh,
he was supposed to play
that
Jimmy.
one. Which it's a comedic role.
Yeah.
Jimmy was kind of a goober.
Yeah,
so.
he was supposed to play Jimmy, but he pulled out of the film. And then they got Harry Connick Jr. I also
was he doing too many drugs?
I don't know why he pulled out. I didn't dig
Whereas
too deep
the Friends
into it.
producers were okay with it, so.
I don't know. That's really mean.
It's true.
It's true.
He talked about it. He
yes.
doesn't remember half of the production
Yeah.
of Friends because he was high the whole time.
But so I also read that his dad has a part in this movie.
Whose?
Matthew Perry's dad.
I didn't know he was an actor.
But
It's not Robert Loggia, is it?
who the heck is that?
He's the general.
Oh, no.
Robert Loggia. You just hear his name and you hear his voice. Like
Yeah, his dad is John Perry. He was.
well, who was he in the movie?
I'm trying to figure that out. I didn't write it down. I don't think he played a big part.
Such an amateur.
I know. I'm so
Show up to
sorry.
this unprepared. So this scene,
he played a Secret Service agent.
yeah, there's a lot of those.
Yeah.
I mean,
So it's just like he was an extra, basically.
so this scene, that's again we're kind of having it play in the background, and this is the part where Dave is introducing the
virus.
computer virus
Yeah.
that he uses to shut down the alien's
Gives it a
shields.
cold.
Gives it a cold. Which, what's another alien sci-fi movie where
War
that
of the
happened?
Worlds.
War of the Worlds. Good job. You did some homework.
I have it written down. See? I have it written down. I did do some homework.
So that's a movie that's kind of now one of my favorites. I never watched the original. There's been a lot of different incarnations, but what was it, the 50s or 60s? Like, it's really old. It's pre-Star Wars, but that's another example of like the special effects in that movie are really, really good for its time. But yeah, the book by H.G. Wells is very famous, and
1953.
oh, so it's a 50s movie. Yeah, it's an incredible feat of film right there.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing in the story is like humans don't actually beat the aliens in that movie. It's the common cold basically is what kills the aliens, and I think they did that intentionally with this movie where they're like, we're going to do that, but we're going to modernize it because computers were coming in the late 90s, early 2000s. And it's like, yeah, it's the same idea. It's a virus, but it's done technologically versus biologically.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, which you got to give them some credit for that. That's some smart thinking.
It's creative.
Because that they used War of the Worlds. That was one of their inspirations when making this movie. So.
Did you... Speaking of other movie references, did you, in all these times of you watching it, catch the 2001 Space Odyssey reference? When he logs into his computer?
Yes.
Says, "Good morning,
it's
Dave."
the red eye.
Well, it also says "Good morning, Dave," which is what Hal says.
Which is what Hal says. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that before.
I figured, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
How about the reference of the Godzilla toys?
What reference of the Godzilla toys?
The stripper's little boy.
Dylan?
He's got Godzilla toy. He has a Godzilla toy and a King Ghidorah toy.
He does?
Yeah. When they're talking, she's talking to the First Lady. Mm-hmm. And he's over there and he's playing with Godzilla toys. Oh. Which maybe is foretelling of the movie in '98 that they were maybe already in talks of making or something. So
yeah. Good catch. Yeah, I didn't even know. Did you catch that recently or?
No, I noticed that a long time ago. Well, pretty much once I learned that it was the same people, and then I watched this movie and I was like, I wonder if they did that intentionally as kind of like a, hey, just so you, I don't know, like an inside joke maybe. Not joke, but an inside thing. Like, hey, we're in talks to make this other movie if this one's successful.
Yeah.
Which it was. I mean, at the box office, this movie was a hit. So it's one of those movies, just like Transformers. Like, everyone shits on it and says that it's terrible, but it's like, well,
seen it.
Why did it make so much money then? Not to say that the box office is reflective of the quality of the movie, because we've seen lots of examples where the movie's not good, but people went to see it anyways.
Yeah.
But this is a movie I'll come into defense for, I guess I should say.
So, speaking of defense, the Secretary of Defense, I hate that guy.
The little Weasley guy?
I hate him.
He's pretty good at that role, though. I mean, a testament to his acting ability. So I've seen him in a few other movies.
Yeah, I've seen him in like little things here and there. But just like, I love his reaction when David's dad, starts yelling about the crash down in Roswell, New Mexico.
Oh yeah.
And Area 51.
Area 51.
And how
he... And the president's like, it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. There's no alien. Like, we know nothing about that. And then he's like, well, that's not entirely true. And like, you just see on its face where he's like, oh.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I think that's a great scene for the movie. But in reality, it's like, why the fuck wouldn't you have said something when they first showed up?
Like, oh, hey, by the way, Mr. President, we've had visitors from outer space before. Maybe we should talk.
Yeah, like maybe
let's just nuke them.
Maybe there's something in Area 51. Maybe they have something that we can use to make an informed decision here.
So
but
stupid.
also to the writer's credit, though, they do address that in the movie. Because Robert Loggia's character, the general, he starts going after the Weasel, saying, like, you should have told us at the moment they arrived about this place. And he said that something about he didn't want to let the president know because of plausible deniability.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, in normal politics, that would make sense. But when they're literally coming down and threatening the entire world, don't you think the president should probably know?
You're not going to be able to cover this one up.
Yeah, so it's a little kind of a logic incontinuity, but for the movie, it's fine. It just, because that makes for that great moment on Air Force One where David's father, Lucius, is just like going off about, that he just sounds like a crazy conspiracy theorist, and then the guy's like, oh, actually, he's right.
Yeah. But
Which, talking about, so David and his father, the scene when they're in their car, and they have that back and forth of, what are they talking about?
The White House.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're on their way to the White House, and they're having this back and forth, and that's all improv.
It's all improv, yeah.
Yeah, which I obviously didn't know as a kid, but once I found out about that, I was like...
It's Julius, by the way.
What am I calling it? Lucius?
Yeah, it's Julius. Yeah.
Yeah, Julius, sorry.
Julius, yes.
That's more...
Levinson.
That's more of a Jewish name than Lucius, but...
yeah, I love the improv there. And...
Yeah, it's great banter, and I always thought that even as a kid. I was like, it's such a good back and forth, it's pretty funny. There's some good comedic stuff in there. David's, or Jeff Goldblum's reactions, like, you can kind of tell it feels authentic.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, that's because it was.
I read that a lot of Jeff Goldblum's stuff was improv. Like him and Will Smith, when they're getting ready to take off, a lot of that was improv for him.
Oh, I could see
read that
too.
A lot of it was improv in the entire time they're in the spaceship, but I don't know how true that is. but
it's probably
a kind of a mixture.
I could see a lot of it. Like, I don't know. I've never wrote a movie script before, but it could be like they say funny stuff, and it's like, well, you put Jeff Goldblum and Will Smith together, some shenanigans are going to take place. So
the Ghostbusters 2016, all he wrote in there was just say funny stuff.
Yeah, that's probably what the script was. But you can't make an entire movie off of that.
No.
As we saw.
No,
but
can't do that. But back to Area 51. I can't talk today. Area 51. The military was supposed to help with this film. You mentioned that before.
Well, I don't know if they were supposed to.
Well, they were willing to. They were asked to, and they were willing to help.
Yeah, but apparently the Area 51 stuff, they're like, yeah, no, we're not going to get involved with that.
Which, to me, screams they don't want to talk about it because it's true.
Or they didn't want to deal with the rumors and stuff that was going to take place after it.
Sure.
Because they know how...
people like me.
Impressionable the population is. And
they're like, I knew it.
Well, if it's in the movie, that means it has to be real. I don't know. Area 51 is one of those strange enigmas where it's like everyone knows it exists, but no one knows what's going on there except for like Bob Lazar, maybe.
All of like the stories about Roswell, New Mexico, it's like, why do all of these things happen in deserts?
Because there's nobody there.
But there are people in Roswell. Like, people lived there. And yet everyone has, like, stories about things happening there. There's, like...
That's because they're all suffering from heat stroke.
Dehydration. That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Now, I've always thought... My opinion of Area 51 is that it's a test site. It's like they're testing... Whether they're testing, like, strange, bizarre technology that's beyond... our current comprehension, or if they're just they're testing like strange designs and military technology or whatever. I think that's probably where a lot of otherwise why be so secret, right? Obviously there's something they don't want you to know about.
I feel like as a military, you're gonna have secret bases that you don't want people to know about because you don't want the enemy to find out what you're doing there. Whether it's you're testing these things, like like in the World War II stuff with when they were building their bombs. They had all kinds of like secret things going on. A lot of people weren't even like, so this person would be working on this thing and then this person would be working on this part of the same mechanism, but they can't talk to each other because it's all secret. So like military stuff is going to be secret, whatever they're doing. It's just, I feel like the alien thing has kind of really
well, if you dive into a conspiracy theory, it's like maybe that's what the military wants you to think, is that it's aliens, because that diverts your attention away from what they're actually doing.
Whoa, conspiracy.
Yeah, FBI, if you're listening, we think you're the greatest. So
what do you think about Steve taking the helicopter?
Well, I think it was for love, so it's.
So you can just magically fly a helicopter because of love.
Okay, yeah. So you want my aeronautical opinion? You
can just hop in there.
So no,
and be like, I'm so in love. Let me fly this helicopter.
I did in our last. We watched the movie a few days ago and prep for this podcast, and I commented about how a lot of movies do this, where they have the simple thought process that, well, if someone's a pilot, that means they can fly any type of aircraft, any type of airframe. And it's like, no, an airplane or fighter jet is very, very different from a helicopter. The physics involved are completely different. It's possible, again, because we don't spend a lot of time with these characters, maybe he's had some helicopter training in his history.
Maybe he's just flown like all aircraft known to man.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. C.W. Lemoyne, he's a fighter pilot, and he just got his helicopter license. So
just barely.
And there's lots of people out there that have, they're dual rated, but they don't establish that in the movie. So so the way the movie portrays it is like, oh, well, he's a pilot, so that means he can fly anything. And a lot of movies do that, especially the lower budget ones. So it's one of those things where because I'm an aviation nerd, I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly.
How about that Brent Spiner, though?
What about him? He plays a crazy man.
Oh, so I wanted to mention about how... So I'm a Trekkie now. I'm a big Star Trek fan. I grew up a Star Wars fan. and that was during the time where you had to be one or the other. So I stuck solely to Star Wars because that was more, the fantasy adventure was more my speed.
Mm-hmm.
But as I got older, I started to get more into the science fiction stuff, and I just started watching Star Trek, the original series, just kind of out of nowhere. I was just like, I need a new series to watch. I like science fiction. I've never really watched Star Trek, so I'm going to watch it. And I was like, I like to do things right. I like to do it from beginning to end. So I said, I'm going to go right to the 60s Star Trek, the original series. I'm going to watch it all the way through, and I fell in love with it. So now I'm a dual lover. I love Star Wars and Star Trek.
And that's okay. You can love both.
Well, now that the internet's a thing, like, I find out there's a lot of people that love both things.
It's okay. The Trek police aren't going to come after you.
So what I think is interesting is when Brent Spiner was in this movie, a lot of people knew him as Data at that point, whereas my introduction to him was this movie. So then when I saw him as Data, I was like, hey, it's the crazy guy from Area 51.
Yeah, he certainly is a crazy guy here.
Yeah.
But, I mean, in his defense, he has been cooped up for a while with other nerdy people.
Well, as he says, as you can imagine, they don't let us out much.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's another thing I wanted to bring up is I mentioned this also during our watch through is the sci-fi reunion. You have a lot of actors in this movie that are either from or have gone off and done other science fiction
like I pointed out, it's not really a reunion unless you watch the other stuff.
Right,
first.
yeah, it's a reunion now.
Yeah.
Like going back and watching it, it's like, oh, holy crap, look at all these people that have gone off and done other science fiction stuff.
McDonald? Is that her name? Mary McDonald?
Is that the First Lady?
Yeah, the First Lady.
Who was the president in Battlestar Galactica, which, if nobody's seen it, I highly recommend it. It's not only some of the best science fiction I've ever seen, some of the best storytelling in television I've ever seen. It's incredible. Not the... I mean, the original in the 70s is probably good, but I'm talking about the 2000s, early 2000s reboot.
Katie Sackhoff.
And yeah.
All of them.
The show... Well, she's probably one of the more notable ones. I was going to say, she's
like one of my favorites, so...
But yeah, the First Lady in this movie, ironically enough, becomes the president in that show, and it's great. So...
Yeah, and then
if anyone hasn't seen it, I go see it because it's great.
And then we also have Adam Baldwin, who plays Jane
Firefly.
in Firefly.
Which Firefly, I love that show, and I am really irritated that it was canceled. Mm-hmm. I think that show had an amazing amount of potential. I wouldn't say it's on the caliber of like Battlestar though. Battlestar, like I said, it's just some of the finest television I've ever seen. Whereas Firefly, it was a really interesting, like fun. A lot of people they talk about they call them space westerns.
Yeah, it was space western.
Like they call Star Wars a space western.
Firefly's even more.
Firefly is literally a western in space.
Yeah, you feel like you're in the Old West, just on different planets.
But with spaceships, space. Yeah, it had a unique thing going, and that's why I'm kind of pissed that they canceled it, because it could have been something special, but they kind of didn't let it happen.
Well,
so
that happens. It's like every show that I really get into and love, it ends up getting canceled. I don't know if that speaks more to me or the studios.
Yeah, you just like shitty things.
Yeah, I like a lot of crappy shows.
So I do have one question left here. Do you think that David's wife and the president were actually having an affair?
No.
Why?
Because she's so focused on her career. Plus,
that's a pretty good way to improve your career.
That's so messed up. So
Monica Lewinsky proved that.
So she points out that it wasn't because she loved him that they had these issues. She loved him 100%. It was just she was focused on her career and wanted him to do more because she knew that he could do more. And I really don't think that she was having an affair. I think she loved David. I think that she wanted to be with David. And I think that she was just spending a lot of time with him because they were on a campaign for the president. You know, a presidential campaign takes so much to prepare for. And when you're the press secretary, sorry, You know, you're doing a lot. You have to be right there front and center. You have to be with him, and you have to coach him on speeches. You have to spend a lot of time. So I can see David's reasoning for getting a little upset.
You understand his jealousy.
But I also think that no, she was not cheating on him with the president. Because, again, the president loves his wife. Like, there doesn't seem to be any proof to me that she was actually cheating. It was just David got a little jealous.
Okay. It's just something it's just something I wondered what maybe your thought would be. Just because there's kind of, they don't... I personally, I think I agree with you. I think it was a purely professional relationship, and David is just like a lot of guys where he's just...
She was spending a lot of time with him. So
spending a lot of time with him and
upset.
Blinded by stupid jealousy.
Yeah.
However, there has been arguments that this president, Whitmore, was modeled after Clinton, who was president during this time. And we all know how that turned out. So it's like, is there maybe something going on? Like, I don't know.
No. I'm not going to talk about the Clintons. So, did you notice that the main hub here is shaped kind of like a bee's nest?
And by the main hub, you mean the scene where they're flying into the mothership?
Yes, sorry. Yes. For everyone that, isn't watching with us, all of you, it's shaped like a bee's nest, and then also
it's like a hive.
The ship itself looks like a beetle. Like, it looks very like beetle-esque, or even a bee, I guess, technically, where like it's got like kind of what looks like legs kind of hanging out on the bottom. I can bring up a picture for you if you want more. But I just think
the mothership?
Yeah. I just think it's interesting because they mention that they're like locusts. They they're like bugs.
Yeah.
They just want to come and take it over. And so I think it's kind of cool.
They destroy, use up the resources, and then they move on. Which is a very interesting premise for an alien invasion, I think.
It's got like legs coming off here. It looks like a beetle.
I see it now.
I don't know what a locust
I never. The many times I've seen this movie, I've never thought of it that way. But yeah, I see what you're talking about.
But yeah, so I just thought it was kind of interesting that they throw that in there, where it looks like a bee's nest. The ship itself looks like a bug. It's interesting. I liked that.
Yeah, well, there again, like
detail.
to circle back to the beginning of our conversation, is that there's a lot of stuff that people like to point out in this movie as being stupid, but it's like, well, there's also a lot of things in here that are like really good ideas, and it comes across in the movie really well. Oh, there was one thing I wanted to bring up too. One last thing about some of the goofiness in this movie that's not very realistic is how quickly David sobers up. So on the night of July 3rd, they basically, everyone, the human race, they all feel defeated. Like, they feel like there's nothing they can do. They launched an assault on the aliens, and they got this protective shield, and they basically wiped out the fighters that were attacking them. And so they're like, what the hell can we do? And they launched the nuclear devices at them, which David obviously is opposed to because he's all about recycling and saving the world.
Yeah. I'm with him. I think that was a stupid decision, but
I actually agree with that decision. It's like, you gotta, when they're literally wiping out the entire world, you gotta be like, well, we have to at least try it, see if it works. What are you gonna do? Just roll over and let them take over your planet?
Making it when it's like, it's been shown that these things are not penetrating their wall. Like, it's been proven. We've seen it. And I don't know. I just don't think
a Sidewinder from a F-18 is very different from a nuclear bomb.
Obviously, but you're taking the chance at destroying all of the fallout. Like, you have all of that fallout from that bomb, and it's going to, if the
so either you have nuclear fallout that maybe you can manage in some way, or you have alien fallout where they're just gonna ravage your planet. So which would you prefer?
I think that they should have waited.
I think they tried all the ways that they knew of at that point, and they're like, well, because, and that's part of the story, right? Is that their initial thought is like, we have to beat them with brute force, which is pretty realistic of how humans tend to think is, well, we can only defeat the enemy through brute force.
Yeah.
What's the strongest club we have? It's a nuclear bomb.
Yes.
Didn't work. So then it came down to somebody like David, who doesn't think that way. He has a little more intellect, and is like, maybe there's another way we can get around their defenses, which is why he developed the virus.
No, and I get the point for the movie. I just, like I said, I agree with David.
So anyway, we were talking about... So David thinks that the world is doomed. Either the aliens are going to destroy us or we're going to destroy ourselves because we're launching nukes. So he gets drunk. He gets hammered. He's not like...
over.
He's drinking hard liquor. He's stumbling all over the place. Which, like, to his credit, I kind of agree with him. He says, like, hey, they want our natural resources. So he's like, fuck it, let's pollute the planet. Then they won't want it anymore. Probably not the best choice, but the logic is sound. And then his dad, Julius, comes up to him and tells him he doesn't want him to catch cold, and he's like, holy crap, like that's the answer. And then, like, literally it's the next morning, July 4th, and he's completely sober. He's got this great plan all figured out, and it's like, man, that guy's like superhuman to be able to recover that quick.
Right. I know. It was like as soon as he got the idea for a cold, it was like, bam, sober.
Yeah. So I guess that's the real cure to a hangover, is an alien invasion, I suppose.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. That would make sense.
Worked for Russell and David.
True.
Yeah. That's about all I got.
Yeah, same. I think the fireworks are starting, so it's probably a good time to wrap it up anyway.
Happy Independence Day, everybody.
Yes. I hope you had a wonderful Independence Day.
Yep.
And I hope you had a cookout and enjoyed some fireworks and
had some hot dogs and some burgers. Celebrate your freedom while you still have it.
All right. Well.
All right, we're gonna make like a tree
and get out of here.